The $6,240 spa charge hit our account while she was on her girl's trip. I texted back, "My lawyer has the receipt. 3 years ago, I wrote the company policy that just destroyed her career. She even signed it. Laughed about it. Call me paranoid. Turns out I was just prepared. My name is Clayton Fitzpatrick. I'm 43 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a pretty solid marriage. 15 years with Camille, built on what I believed was mutual respect and shared ambition. She was managing director of private client services at Whitmore & Associates, one of the most exclusive boutique private banks in Boston. I was their wealth management compliance officer. We met at a compliance conference in New York back in 2010, bonded over terrible hotel coffee and a shared frustration with regulatory loopholes. She laughed at my jokes. I admired her drive. We got married 18 months later. For years, it worked. We were a power couple in Boston's financial district. No kids by choice. We both wanted to focus on building our careers first. Her clients trusted her with their multi-million-dollar portfolios. I made sure the bank never crossed ethical or legal lines. It was a clean division of labor. Then came Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my home office, reviewing compliance reports for the quarter, when my phone buzzed with a banking alert. Joint account withdrawal, $6,240. Vendor, Azure Coast Spa and Wellness Resort, Miami Beach. Description, deluxe couples, oceanfront experience. I stare at the screen. Couples, not solo, not girls' wellness retreat, which was what Camille told me she was doing this week. She'd left 4 days ago with her college friend Rachel, or so she said. Business networking mixed with relaxation. I hadn't questioned it. I set my phone down slowly, opened my laptop, and pulled up her joint account. The spa charge was there, time-stamped 2 hours ago. But that wasn't all. The flight to Miami, charged to our account 3 days ago. A penthouse suite at the Meridian Hotel, 4 nights, $3,800. 2 dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of. Wine that cost more per bottle than our monthly utilities. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Camille. Miami is gorgeous. Wish you were here. I read it twice. Then I opened the banking app again, took a screenshot of the spa charge, and typed one sentence back. Glad you're enjoying the hotel. The $6,240 couple spa package just hit our account. My lawyer has the receipt. I hit send. Then I stood up, walked to the filing cabinet in the corner, and pulled out a folder I hadn't touched in 3 years. On the tab, written in my precise handwriting, Clause 14, Fiduciary Conduct Policy. 3 years ago, Whitmore & Associates had asked me to overhaul their ethics manual. Camille had been on the internal review committee. She joked about one section. I added a clause about romantic relationships between employees during business travel funded by the firm. If expenses were shared or improperly billed, it triggered automatic termination proceedings. You're paranoid, she'd said, laughing over wine at our kitchen counter. Nobody's that stupid. I'd smiled. Maybe. But if they are, the bank's protected. She'd signed off on it. Her initials were still in the document's edit history. Now I sat back down, opened my contacts, and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in years. Theodore Grant. We'd worked together at the Federal Reserve back in the day, running audits on institutions that thought they were untouchable. Now he was chief compliance officer at Whitmore & Associates. My former colleague, Camille's current boss. He answered on the second ring. Clayton, he said, cautious. It's been a while. It has, I replied. I need to talk to you about a fiduciary breach. Off the record for now. There was a pause. How bad? Bad enough that you'll want to see the documentation before you decide how to handle it. Another pause. Then, quieter. Does this involve someone at the firm? Yes. Camille. I didn't answer immediately. The silence did it for me. Theodore exhaled slowly. Send me everything. Encrypted. I'll look at it tonight. Understood. I hung up, pulled together the receipts, the screenshots, the credit card statement showing charges that didn't match her stated itinerary. Then I added one more document, the ethics policy. Clause 14. The one she'd laughed about. The one that was about to end her career. My phone buzzed. Camille again. What are you talking about? What lawyer? I didn't reply. I just forwarded the screenshot of the couple's spa charge and turned my phone face down on the desk. Outside, the late afternoon sun slanted through the window. Somewhere in Miami, my wife was realizing she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. and I was just getting started. Theodore called me back at 9 that night. I was still on my desk, going through files I kept organized in folders most people would find obsessive. Bank statements from the past 2 years. Credit card transactions. Travel itineraries. I'm the kind of person who saves everything, not because I expect betrayal, but because I understand that documentation is power. I reviewed what you sent, Theodore said without preamble. His voice was tight, controlled. This is worse than I thought. How bad? I asked, though I already knew. The spa charge alone would trigger an audit under our fiduciary standards. But the hotel suite, the dinners, the fact that she's billing personal expenses to corporate entertainment, that's grounds for immediate suspension. He paused. Who's the other party? Colton Rivers, I said. Investment analyst in her department. 27 years old. Been with the firm for 3 years. Theodore went quiet. I could hear him breathing, processing. She's his direct supervisor. Correct. Jesus Christ. Another pause. Clayton, you know what this means. If I escalate this to Harrison, if the CEO gets involved, this doesn't just end her career. It ends her professionally. Everywhere. I know, I said. My voice was calm, steady. That's why I'm giving you the documentation now, while it's still internal. You can handle it however you see fit. But Theodore, I need you to know something. What's that? 3 years ago, when we were drafting the updated ethics policy, Camille was on the review committee. She signed off on Clause 14. She specifically approved the language about romantic relationships during corporate sponsor travel. I pulled up the document on my screen, scrolled to the signature page. Her initials are in the edit history. She even made a comment in the margin. What did she write? I read it aloud. Seems harsh, but necessary for legal protection. Theodore didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was different, colder. She wrote her own termination clause. She did. And you want me to enforce it? I want you to do your job, I said. The same job I've been doing for 15 years. Holding people accountable when they violate policy. He exhaled slowly. I'll take this to Harrison tomorrow morning. Confidentially. But Clayton, once this starts, it doesn't stop. The board will have to be involved. Legal will get looped in. If there's any chance she's been misusing client funds or corporate resources beyond this trip. There is, I interrupted. I opened another file on my desktop. 2 years ago, Camille received a $95,000 performance bonus for a strategic growth initiative she pitched to the board. Client acquisition plan targeting high-net-worth individuals in the tech sector. I remember that, Theodore said. It was a significant win for her. It was my idea, I said flatly. I developed that plan in 2021 for a consulting project I was working on independently. Business development strategy for private wealth management. I kept the files on her home server. She copied them, rebranded the presentation, and submitted it as her own work. Silence. Then, can you prove that? Timestamp files with my metadata. Email drafts I sent to a colleague for feedback, dated 8 months before Camille's presentation to the board. I can send you everything. Theodore was quiet for a long moment. Why didn't you say anything when it happened? Because I loved her, I said simply, and I thought maybe she'd done it unintentionally. That maybe she'd seen my files, internalized the ideas, and forgotten where they came from. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. And now I know better. Theodore cleared his throat. I'll need those files too. This is going to get complicated, Clayton. Are you ready for that? I looked at the folder on my desk. Clause 14. The policy I'd written. The one Camille had approved. The one that was about to destroy everything she'd built. I've been ready for 3 years, I said. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my office. My phone was face down on the desk. Camille hadn't called, hadn't tried to explain. Just 3 frantic texts asking what I meant. What lawyer was I talking about? I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to my attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Voss who specialized in high-asset divorces. I consulted her 6 months ago, not because I was planning to leave, but because I'd started noticing things. Late nights that didn't match Camille's calendar. Texts she angled away from me. A distance that felt deliberate. I'd hoped I was wrong, but hope doesn't hold up in court. Documentation does. Harrison Aldridge didn't waste time. Theodore called me at 7:30 the next morning, his voice clipped and professional. Harrison wants to meet. Today, 10 a.m. at his office. Just him. I asked. Him, me, and legal. Patricia Reed from our general counsel's office will be present. Harrison wants this documented properly from the start. I knew Patricia. Sharp, no nonsense, the kind of attorney who treated compliance violations like personal insults. If she was in the room, this was already serious. I'll be there, I said. Clayton, Theodore said, his voice softening slightly. You understand what's about to happen, right? Once we present this to the board, there's no walking it back. Camille's career is over. I know, and you're okay with that. I looked at the file on my desk. The one with her initials next to Clause 14. The one with the stolen business plan. The one with evidence of her trying to get pregnant without my knowledge. Messages I'd found on her laptop 3 months ago when she'd left it open. Messages to her friend Lauren. Stop taking the pill. If I get pregnant, Clayton won't leave. I need his stability while I build my career. Yes, I said. I'm okay with that. The meeting was everything I expected. Harrison's office was on the top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Boston Harbor. He sat behind a massive oak desk, Patricia to his left with a legal pad already half filled with notes. Theodore sat across from them. I took the remaining chair. Harrison looked at me with the expression of a man trying to calculate damage. Clayton, Theodore briefed me on the situation. I've reviewed the documentation you provided. Before we proceed, I need to ask, is there any possibility this is a misunderstanding? No, I said. The charges are clear. The timeline is clear. Camille is in Miami with Colton Rivers, billing personal expenses to corporate accounts while claiming it's business travel. Patricia spoke up, her pen poised. Mr. Fitzpatrick, you mentioned additional concerns beyond the Miami trip. Can you elaborate? I pulled out a flash drive from my jacket pocket, slid it across the desk to her. 2 years ago, Camille received a performance bonus for a client acquisition strategy she presented to the board. That strategy was developed by me, independently, 8 months prior. The files on that drive are time-stamped and include email correspondence proving I created the work. She copied it from our shared home server and passed it off as her own. Patricia inserted the drive in her laptop, pulled up the files, and started scrolling. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her jaw tighten. Harrison leaned forward. You're alleging intellectual property theft. I'm stating a fact, I said. She took my work, presented it as hers, and collected $95,000 for it. I have the original drafts, the metadata, and third-party correspondence that predates her presentation by months. Theodore spoke quietly. Clayton also informed me that he's found evidence Camille attempted to conceive without his consent as a means of preventing him from leaving the marriage. Harrison's expression hardened. Patricia stopped typing and looked up at me. Can you substantiate that? She asked. I pulled out printed screenshots, messages between Camille and her friend from 3 months ago. Harrison read them, his face unreadable. Then he set them down carefully. This is beyond a compliance issue, he said finally. This is a pattern of deception, fraud, and manipulation. He looked at Theodore. We need the board involved. Immediately. Theodore nodded. I'll schedule an emergency session for tomorrow. Harrison turned to me. Clayton, I need to be direct with you. If we pursue this, if we terminate Camille for cause and potentially seek restitution for the stolen intellectual property, this will become public. Are you prepared for that? I am, I said. And Harrison, there's one more thing you should know. He waited. Camille's father, Howard, is an investor in the firm. He has a significant stake in Whitmore and Associates. Harrison's eyes narrowed. How significant? $8 million. He invested during the capital raise 4 years ago. The room went silent. Patricia closed her laptop slowly. Theodore looked at me like I just detonated a bomb. Harrison leaned back in his chair. Her father is going to lose a substantial amount of money when this becomes public knowledge and client confidence drops. Yes, I said. He is. Camille called me 16 times that day. I didn't answer. By evening, she'd switched tactics. Voicemails. Long, rambling explanations that started with denial and ended with anger. Clayton, I don't know what you think you saw, but you're wrong. Colton and I are working on a client pitch. That's all. The spa was a team-building exercise. Then, an hour later, you're being paranoid. This is exactly why we have problems. You don't trust me. And finally, late that night, if you ruin my career over this, I will never forgive you. Do you hear me? Never. I listened to each message once, saved them, and forwarded them to Patricia Reed. The next morning, Theodore called. The board met. Emergency session. It was unanimous. And Camille is suspended, effective immediately. Pending a full investigation, but Clayton, between you and me, this is a formality. She's done. Harrison is drafting the termination paperwork now. What about Colton? I asked. Same. He's being terminated for violating subordinate relationship policies. He doesn't have the protection of tenure that Camille had, so his exit will be faster. I sat down slowly. When does she find out? HR is calling her in 2 hours. They'll inform her of the suspension and request she return to Boston immediately for a formal hearing. Good. Theodore paused. Her father called Harrison this morning. I expected he would. He's threatening legal action. Says you're fabricating evidence to destroy his daughter's reputation. Let him threaten, I said. Everything I provided is documented, time-stamped, and verifiable. If he wants to escalate, he'll lose worse than she will. Theodore was quiet for a moment. You've thought this through, haven't you? Every angle. I've had 3 years to think it through, I said. Ever since I wrote Clause 14 and watched her laugh about it. That afternoon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Mr. Fitzpatrick, this is Howard Caldwell, Camille's father. His voice was controlled, but I could hear the fury underneath. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but you're making a serious mistake. I'm enforcing the policies your daughter helped create, I said calmly. Nothing more. You're destroying her career out of spite. She made a mistake, Clayton. People make mistakes. She didn't make a mistake, I said. She made a series of calculated decisions. She stole my work, collected a bonus for it, engaged in a relationship with a subordinate, billed personal expenses to corporate accounts, and attempted to manipulate me into staying in a marriage by getting pregnant without my consent. None of that is a mistake. It's a pattern. Howard went silent. Then, quieter, she told me about the pregnancy thing. She said it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't, I said. I have the messages. She wrote them herself. Another pause. What do you want, Clayton? Money? I can make this go away. No, you can't, I said. And I don't want your money. I want accountability. Your daughter broke the rules. She's facing the consequences. That's how this works. You self-righteous son of... I hung up. 20 minutes later, my attorney Patricia Voss called. I just received a very angry message from Howard Caldwell's lawyer. They're threatening to sue for defamation. Let them, I said. Discovery will be fascinating. Patricia laughed, a short, sharp sound. You're colder than I thought, Clayton. No, I said. I'm just done pretending I'm not. The board moved faster than I expected. Theodore called me 3 days after the emergency session, his voice carrying a weight I hadn't heard before. It's done, he said. Camille was terminated this morning. For cause. The vote was unanimous. I was standing in my kitchen, coffee in hand, looking out at the gray Boston morning. What were the grounds? Misuse of corporate funds, violation of Clause 14 regarding romantic relationships with subordinates during company-sponsored travel, and intellectual property theft. The legal team is also pursuing restitution for the $95,000 bonus she received for your stolen work. And Colton, terminated yesterday. He didn't even fight it. Signed a settlement agreement that includes a non-disclosure clause and forfeiture of his remaining stock options. I set my coffee down. What about her professional certifications? Theodore paused. Patricia Reed has already filed a complaint with the Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards. Camille holds a CFP designation. Given the nature of the violations, specifically the fiduciary breach and fraudulent misrepresentation, there's a strong likelihood her certification will be revoked. That would end her career entirely. Without a CFP designation, no reputable wealth management firm would hire her. She'd be blacklisted. How did she take it? I asked. She didn't show up to the termination meeting. HR had to deliver the paperwork via courier to the house. She refused to sign for it. She's still in Miami? No, she flew back 2 days ago. She's been calling Harrison's office repeatedly, demanding to speak with him. He's refused every call. I picked up my coffee again, took a slow sip. Has she tried to contact me? I don't know. Has she? 37 calls in the last 72 hours, I said. I haven't answered any of them. Theodore went quiet for a moment. Then he said, Clayton, there's something else you should know. Howard Caldwell, Camille's father. He's pulling his investment from the firm. All $8 million. Every cent. He's invoking the redemption clause in his partnership agreement. It's going to hurt our liquidity position, but Harrison said it's worth it to cut ties completely. Good, I said. He's also hired a legal team. They sent a letter to Patricia yesterday, threatening to sue you personally for tortious interference and defamation. I almost laughed. Let them. Discovery will be entertaining. You're not concerned? No, I said. Everything I provided is documented and provable. If Howard wants to spend $250,000 on legal fees to lose publicly, that's his choice. Theodore sighed. You're a harder man than I thought, Clayton. I'm a careful man, I corrected. There's a difference. After we hung up, I walked to my filing cabinet and pulled out another folder. One I hadn't shown Theodore yet. Inside were bank statements from a joint account Camille and I had opened years ago. I'd been monitoring it carefully for the past 6 months, ever since I noticed irregular transfers. $23,000. That's how much she'd quietly moved from our joint savings into a personal account I wasn't supposed to know about. Small transfers, 1,000 here, 1,500 there, spread out over months to avoid triggering alerts. She'd been preparing to leave me, building a nest egg, planning her exit while still sleeping in her bed. I photographed every statement, uploaded them to an encrypted folder, and sent the link to Patricia Voss, my divorce attorney. Her response came back in under 5 minutes. This is gold. Filing amended petition to include financial dissipation. She won't see a dime. I closed my laptop and looked around the apartment I'd been renting for the past week. Small, clean, quiet. No photographs on the walls. No memories. Just space. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Please. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I love you. Camille. Using someone else's phone because I'd blocked her number. I deleted the message without responding. I was at Dr. Emily Cole's office when the call came. I'd been seeing her for 6 months, ever since I'd started noticing the distance between Camille and me widening into something irreparable. Emily was a psychologist specializing in relationship trauma and strategic life transitions. She didn't do couples therapy. She helped individuals prepare for the aftermath of betrayal. You're doing well, Emily said during our session. Better than most people in your situation. I don't feel like I'm doing well, I admitted. I feel like I'm executing a plan I never wanted to make. That's because you are, she said gently. But the plan was necessary. You saw what was coming, and you prepared for it. That's not cold, Clayton. That's survival. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Mr. Fitzpatrick, this is David Brennan. I'm calling from Sterling and Cross Financial Group. Sterling and Cross, one of the largest private wealth management firms on the East Coast. Competitors to Whitmore and Associates. How can I help you? I asked. I'll be direct, Brennan said. We've been following the situation at Whitmore. Word travels fast in our industry. We're impressed by how you've handled this matter, both ethically and professionally. We'd like to offer you a position as our Chief Compliance Officer. I sat up straighter. I'm listening. $320,000 base salary, performance bonuses tied to audit results, full benefits, and equity participation after year 1. You'd be overseeing compliance for 42 offices across 15 states. It was nearly double what I was making at Whitmore. Why me? I asked. Because you just proved you're incorruptible, Brennan said simply. You reported your own wife for ethical violations, provided evidence that destroyed her career, and you did it by the book. That's the kind of integrity we want leading our compliance division. I glanced at Emily. She was watching me, one eyebrow raised. When would you need an answer? I asked. We'd like to move quickly. Can you meet with our executive team next week? Yes, I said. I can. After the call ended, Emily smiled. That's what accountability looks like, Clayton. You didn't just survive this. You're about to come out ahead. I nodded slowly, but it didn't feel like winning. It felt like standing in the ruins of something I'd once believed in, holding a job offer written in the ashes. That night, I got home to find Camille sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. She looked terrible, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and a jacket that had seen better days. She stood when she saw me. Clayton, please. Just 5 minutes. No, I said, walking past her toward the door. She grabbed my arm. I stopped, looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Let go, I said quietly. I'm sorry, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I know I did. But we can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can. There's nothing to fix, I said. You stole from me. You cheated on me. You tried to trap me with a pregnancy I didn't consent to. You built a career on my work and took credit for it. There is no coming back from that. Please, she whispered. I have nothing left. They took my job. My certification is under review. My father won't speak to me. I have nothing. You have exactly what you earned, I said. I pulled my arm free and walked into the building, letting the door close behind me. Through the glass, I watched her collapse onto the steps, sobbing. I didn't look back. The corporate Slack leak came on a Thursday. Theodore called me at 6 a.m, his voice strained in a way I'd never heard before. Clayton, we have a problem. Internal communications found something during the audit. You need to see this. What is it? I asked, already pulling my laptop open. Messages between Camille and several colleagues. From the past 2 years. She was talking about you. My jaw tightened. Send them. The file came through encrypted. I opened it and started reading. The first message was from 18 months ago, in a group chat with 3 other executives from the firm. Camille, Clayton's working late again on some compliance nonsense. I swear he gets more excited about spreadsheets than he does about me, lol. Rebecca, VP of Operations, at least he's stable. Better than my ex who couldn't hold a job. Camille, stable is just another word for boring. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be with someone who actually has ambition. I scrolled down. There were dozens more. My hand stayed steady on the keyboard, but something cold was settling in my chest. Camille, 6 months ago, had dinner with clients tonight. Clayton asked how it went. I told him it was productive. Didn't mention that Colton was there or that we stayed out until midnight. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. Lauren, marketing director, girl, be careful. You're playing with fire. Camille, please. Clayton's too comfortable to ask questions. He trusts me completely. It's actually kind of sad. Another one, from 4 months ago. Camille, you know what's funny? Clayton thinks I'm this brilliant strategist. Half the plans I've presented came from his old consulting files. He does all this work and never even realizes I'm using it. He's like my personal research department. Rebecca, that's kind of genius actually. Camille, I know, right? And he's so modest he'd never take credit even if he knew. Perfect setup. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't just betrayal. This was contempt. Calculated, deliberate contempt. Theodore's voice came through the phone. Clayton, I'm sorry. I know this is. Forward these to Patricia Reed, I said, my voice flat. And to my divorce attorney. Every single one. Already done, Theodore said quietly. Legal wants to add this to the termination file. It demonstrates a pattern of ethical violations and professional misconduct. It also supports your claim that she knowingly stole your intellectual property. Good, I said. There's more, Theodore continued. Howard Caldwell's attorneys withdrew their defamation lawsuit this morning. No explanation. They just filed a notice of voluntary dismissal. Why? Because Patricia Reed sent them these messages, along with a letter explaining that if they proceed with litigation, we'll enter all of this into public court record during discovery. Howard apparently decided his daughter's reputation couldn't survive that level of exposure. I almost smiled. Almost. Clayton, Theodore said, his voice careful. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. Just send me anything else you find. After we hung up, I forwarded the entire message thread to Dr. Emily Cole with a single line. Thought you should see this. Her response came back within the hour. This validates everything we discussed. You didn't imagine the distance. She created it deliberately. Come in tomorrow if you need to talk. I didn't need to talk. I needed to finish this. Patricia Voss, my divorce attorney, called me 2 days later with news that shifted the entire battlefield. Clayton, I found something. Something big. I was in my new apartment, unpacking boxes I've been avoiding for a week. What is it? Camille's pension fund. She has approximately $280,000 in her 401k from Whitmore. It's been accruing for 15 years. And Whitmore's legal team just filed a motion to freeze the account pending resolution of their restitution claim. They're arguing that since she defrauded the company by stealing your intellectual property and collecting a bonus based on that fraud, They have a legal right to recover damages from any available assets, including retirement accounts. I set down the box I was holding. Can they do that? It's aggressive, but yes. The law allows creditors to pursue retirement funds in cases of fraud or embezzlement. And Patricia Reed has documented everything meticulously. She's got timestamps, metadata, the original files you created, email correspondence, proving you developed the work independently. It's airtight. How long will the freeze last? Until the lawsuit is resolved. Could be months, could be longer if Camille fights it. But Clayton, here's the thing. If Whitmore wins their restitution claim for the $95,000 bonus, and the court finds that she acted with fraudulent intent, they could potentially claim a significant portion of that pension to satisfy the judgment. I walked to the window, looked out at the Boston skyline. She's going to be financially destroyed. She already is, Patricia said bluntly. She has no job, no prospects, her professional certification is being revoked, and now her retirement savings are frozen. Her legal bills alone are probably close to $50,000 by now. And Clayton, there's something else. What? The prenuptial agreement you signed 15 years ago. Do you remember the infidelity clause? I did. We both insisted on it, back when we were young and optimistic and thought we were being responsible adults. If either party commits adultery and it's proven, they forfeit any claim to alimony and receive $1 in the final settlement. Exactly, Patricia said. I have photos, bank statements, hotel records, witness testimony from Whitmore employees. I can prove adultery 6 ways from Sunday, which means in the divorce, she gets nothing. Not the house, not spousal support, nothing. Just one symbolic dollar. She signed that agreement, I said quietly. She did. Enthusiastically, if I recall from the notary records. She thought it protected her just as much as it protected you. When do we file? I already did. This morning. Divorce petition citing irreconcilable differences in adultery, requesting enforcement of the prenuptial agreement, and seeking full ownership of all marital assets including the house, which as you noted is held in your family trust anyway. I closed my eyes. How long until she served? 72 hours. Maybe less. When I hung up, I stood at the window for a long time, watching the city move below me. Cars, people, lives intersecting and diverging in patterns nobody could predict. My phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. Please call me. I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes. Please, Clayton. I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. She'd had 15 years to talk to me with honesty. She'd chosen contempt instead. Now she had nothing to say that I needed to hear. The civil hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late November. Whitmore and Associates versus Camille Fitzpatrick. Case number CV 2024-8847. Seeking restitution for intellectual property theft and fraud. I wasn't required to attend, but Patricia Reed had called me the night before. You should be there, she said. Not as a witness, but in the gallery. She needs to see that you're not hiding. So I went. The courthouse was one of those old Boston buildings with marble floors and columns that made every footstep echo. I arrived early, passed through security, and found my way to courtroom 4B on the 3rd floor. The gallery was mostly empty when I took my seat in the back row. Camille entered through the side door with her attorney, Gerald Hutchins. She'd lost weight, maybe 15 pounds, and her suit hung loose on her frame. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no professional styling. The polish that had always defined her was gone. She looked older than her 38 years. She didn't see me at first. Then she turned, scanning the gallery, and our eyes met. Her face went pale. I saw something break behind her eyes. Not anger, not defiance, just exhaustion and defeat. I kept my expression neutral, held her gaze for a moment, then looked away toward the judge's bench. The hearing lasted 90 minutes. Patricia Reed presented the case with precision. She entered my original files into evidence, time-stamped and documented. She showed emails I'd sent to third-party consultants 8 months before Camille's presentation to the board. She presented metadata showing file creation dates, everything proving I'd created the work independently. Then she introduced the Slack messages, the ones where Camille bragged about using my work, the ones where she called me boring and unambitious, the ones where she admitted to stealing my intellectual property. Gerald Hutchins argued it was a misunderstanding, that Camille believed the ideas were developed jointly during marital discussions, that there was no fraudulent intent. The judge, a woman in her mid-60s named Margaret Caldwell, wasn't buying it. "Mr. Hutchins," she said, looking over her reading glasses, "your client's own written communications contradict that assertion. She explicitly stated in multiple messages that she took Mr. Fitzpatrick's work without his knowledge and used it to obtain a promotion and financial compensation. That is not a misunderstanding. That is fraud." Hutchins sat down slowly. Judge Caldwell continued, "Furthermore, the defendant violated her employer's code of conduct by engaging in a romantic relationship with a subordinate during corporate-sponsored travel and billing personal expenses to company accounts. The evidence is overwhelming." She looked directly at Camille. "Ms. Fitzpatrick, do you have anything you'd like to say before I render my decision?" Camille stood slowly, her hands shaking. Hutchins touched her arm, shook his head, warning her not to speak. But she pulled away. "Your Honor," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I made terrible mistakes. I violated policies I helped create. I stole work from my husband and claimed it as my own. I betrayed his trust and my employer's trust." She paused, tears running down her face. "I have no excuse. I was ambitious and reckless, and I thought I could get away with it because I'd never faced consequences before. I was wrong." The courtroom went silent. Judge Caldwell nodded slowly. "Ms. Fitzpatrick, I appreciate your honesty, belated as it is. However, honesty after being caught does not mitigate the severity of your actions. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Whitmore and Associates. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $95,000, plus legal fees and court costs totaling an additional $42,000. Furthermore, your 401k retirement account, currently valued at approximately $280,000, will remain frozen until this judgment is satisfied in full." She brought her gavel down once. "We're adjourned." Camille collapsed in her chair. Hutchins placed a hand on her shoulder, speaking quietly. I stood and walked out before she could turn around. Outside on the courthouse steps, Patricia Reed caught up with me. "That was a complete victory," she said. "Everything we asked for." "I know," I said. She studied my face. "You don't look happy." "I'm not happy," I said. "I'm just done." She nodded. "The divorce will be finalized in about 8 weeks. With the prenup and the adultery evidence, it's straightforward. She'll get her $1, and you'll retain all assets." "Good," I said. "Clayton, what are you going to do now?" I looked out at the city. "I'm taking the job at Sterling and Cross. I start in 3 weeks. And I'm selling the house. Too many memories. I'm buying something new. Something that's just mine." Patricia smiled slightly. "Fresh start." "Something like that," I said. For months later, I stood in my new townhouse in Cambridge, boxes mostly unpacked, furniture arranged deliberately different from anything in the home I'd shared with Camille. The leather couch faced a new direction. The desk sat by a window with morning light. Even the art was new, pieces I'd chosen from local galleries. The job at Sterling and Cross was everything they promised. Challenging, respected, well compensated. I'd restructured their entire compliance division in 3 months, and the board had approved my recommendations for expansion. They'd hinted at a promotion to senior vice president by year's end. Dr. Emily Cole had helped me process the aftermath, the strange emptiness that comes after winning a battle you never wanted. "You did the right thing," she told me in our last session. "Not just legally, but morally. You held someone accountable who thought they were above accountability. That matters." 2 weeks ago, I got a letter from Theodore Grant. Handwritten, not an email. "Clayton, I wanted you to know that your work here changed how we think about compliance and integrity. You set a standard that most people talk about, but few actually live by. The firm is better because you were part of it, and I'm better for having known you. If you ever need anything, you know where to find me. Theodore." I kept that letter in my desk drawer. Camille had disappeared from public view entirely. I'd heard through industry channels she'd moved to Tampa, taken a job doing administrative work for a small accounting firm. Nothing in wealth management. Nothing requiring the CFP certification that had been permanently revoked. The life she'd built was gone. I didn't feel satisfaction about that. I felt a quiet certainty that justice had been served. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Voss. "Divorce finalized." Official decree signed by the judge this morning. You're free. I read it twice, then set the phone down. Free. I didn't feel free exactly. I felt like someone who'd survived something and was still figuring out what survival meant. I walked to the window, looked out at the Cambridge street below. A couple was walking past, young, holding hands, laughing, their whole lives ahead of them. I hoped they'd be smarter than we were. I hoped they'd build their relationship on honesty instead of ambition, on respect instead of convenience. But that wasn't my story anymore. My story was standing in a townhouse I'd bought with my own money, in a job I'd earned through integrity, with a future that belonged entirely to me. Camille had taught me something valuable, though she'd never intended to. She taught me that some people will take everything you offer and still want more. That trust without verification is just naivety dressed up as love. That sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is stand up and say enough to someone you once promised forever to. I'd said enough, and I'd meant it. The evening light slanted through the window, warm and golden. Somewhere in the city, life continued, messy and complicated. People making choices they'd have to live with, building futures on truth or lies. I made my choices. I'd built my foundation on truth, even when it cost me 15 years. And that foundation was solid. For the first time in years, I could breathe without something crushing my chest. The future stretched out ahead, uncertain but mine. And that was worth everything.